regular meeting of the Planning Commission for October 17th, 2018. Could we have a roll call, Sherry?
Chair Quillisi.
Here.
Commissioners Jagiello.
Here.
Merck.
Here.
Corbin.
Here.
Lottis. Here. Vice Chair Nolan and Commissioner Powers are absent.
All right, could we have a Pledge of Allegiance? Chester, would you lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, as a admonishment to our huge audience tonight, members of the public wishing to address the Planning Commission on items appearing on the agenda are requested to fill out a speaker's card, one of these little green things, and file it with the secretary. Sherry's right here, willing to take your cards. Cards are available in the lobby. Speakers should state their name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less unless otherwise directed. Comments must be directed to the commission, not the audience, and while the Planning Commission is in session, all in attendance are expected to maintain order and decorum and to obey the orders of the chair. And the audience looks very decorous tonight, so. All right. Our first item on the agenda is public communications, the time set aside during the Planning Commission meeting for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on items of city business other than scheduled agenda items. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the Commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. I have one speaker's card for public communications. Deborah Pendry, come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chair Quillisi. Commissioners, my name is Deborah Pendry. I live at 309 Riverside Road in Oakview. I'm representing the Ojai Valley Green Coalition tonight, and I came here to give some information that you might not have. One of the challenges we have as an organization, as the city of Ojai has, we talk about it frequently, is knowing what the county of Ventura is doing that influences the valley-wide community. And vice versa, like left-hand, right-hand thing. It kind of goes on. It's a big challenge. So we're real excited that last Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors voted 3-2 to pass a dark skies overlay zone ordinance for the unincorporated area within the MAC, or the Municipal Advisory Council, boundary areas. So now we're all kind of jiving on preserving our night sky and keeping light pollution down in the community. And so we're actually going to be coming back to the city council to kind of upgrade the city ordinance. But that's the first step for the county and the city and our community to be working together on that. And secondly, Board of Supervisors yesterday voted the same as the city of Ojai with the Clean Power Alliance. As you know, the Los Angeles County, Ventura County have come together to create the agency so that we can start having renewable energy in our portfolio. And so you have, the question was the default rate that electric customers would have, right, on that renewable energy portfolio. And the option was 36%, 50%, or 100% tier. The city of Ojai voted for the 100% tier. A while ago, the county voted 100% for commercial, and yesterday they voted 100% for residential. So now we're all on the same page with that also. So that was very exciting to have that come together. And then finally, I do want to share that the Sierra Club Los Padres chapter, CFROG, which is Citizens for Responsible Oil and Gas, and the Green Coalition are sponsoring a candidates forum tomorrow for the city of Ojai. It's strictly about resiliency and sustainability. So we will have all 5 candidates at the Chaparral Auditorium, 7 to 9 p.m., which is 414 East Ojai Avenue. So we encourage you and the community to come out. Basically, we want to get the candidates' vision and ideas on resiliency and sustainability and kind of put them on the record. And again, Chaparral Auditorium tomorrow night, Thursday, October 18th, 7 to 9 p.m. Thank you.
Deborah?
Yes, sir.
You said all 5 candidates. That's 2 mayoral candidates and 3 council
Correct.
candidates? Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
Very good. Thank you. I have no other cards. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak during public communications? If not, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, the consent item, minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning Commission, October 3rd. Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment on that. I would like to have,
This is a comment on the minutes themselves?
Yes.
Okay,
is that appropriate right now?
it is.
Okay. On page 5 of 6, the commission asks staff questions. I don't think it's clear what my concern was about the applicant having to apply for an additional conditional use permit in addition to the restaurant permit. What I was suggesting was that we look at a path for streamlining this permitting process, and that if a restaurant is permitted, that an alcohol permit be part and parcel of that, so that it shouldn't be a whole separate part. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was what I wanted to make
So
known, and I want that
we
clear in the
want-
minutes.
We could say then she is in support of the project, but would like to see the permitting process streamlined
Yes,
so that only a single permit is required for
Yes.
restaurant and alcohol.
yes.
I have to ask the community development director, I know the alcohol license is a state thing, not a local thing.
Yes, and when the state gives you your permit, they require that you serve food unless you're a bar. But for a restaurant, it's called an on-site eating, drinking establishment. You are required to submit your menu and to give proof that you actually provide food. So I think any restaurant that actually provides food and cooks it, should be able to serve beer and wine, should be able to get an alcohol license, and I don't think it should be another permit from the city.
Right, and that,
Because you're already getting a state permit, and they are regulating that you're serving food.
that is correct, and it is common in a lot of cities require a separate use permit, but you're right, it's duplicative, because the state's doing it anyway.
Right.
It's
But
redundant.
it's only
It-
in the VMU, it's not in the C1 required.
Right.
It already isn't required in the C1.
Right, and I also thought the
Ah.
issue last week was that they had gotten recent permits, like within the last year, and at that time, they weren't sure whether they were gonna have so it might have been a timing question. Just like with the outdoor seating, they didn't include at that time, but,
Well, I think the bar was always on the plan.
okay. But I get, your comment really is, why is the city even requiring it if the state
Yes.
is doing it?
That's yes. that's
Somebody
what-
else is doing
right.
that
It's
for
one-
us.
It's just one more thing that I would like to add to the list of things that we could streamline in the permitting process.
So when we were going through, say, the code, for instance, on some cleanups,
Yes.
that could be a suggestion.
That would be a good time to look at that, Luke.
Mhm.
Okay? Any other
Well,
comments
just
on?
one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well,
Go
no,
right
it's,
ahead.
it's not appropriate, actually, because she's talking about the minutes, so that's okay. It's another.
All right. Any other comments on the minutes?
Actually, could we just add a little bit more on my comment on parking? And just to say that, let's see, Commissioner Alatas asked about parking and expressed concern that no parking is required for outdoor dining.
Oh.
And let's see, express concern about that no parking was required for outdoor dining and the scale of the proposed project.
Correct. That's how I remembered your comments, because the outdoor dining was more seating than the indoor dining.
Yes.
Yep.
Is this to say then that there could be a restaurant with only outdoor dining and there would be no parking required no matter where they were in the city?
It's an interesting question, but the outdoor dining does not drive parking requirements. I mean, the assumption is you're going to have some indoor, but I think in the case of the 2 weeks ago, I don't remember the number of indoor seats, but the outdoor was greater. So it wasn't like, say, you had 40 indoor seats and you added 10 outside. It was more like 20 and 40 the other way. so the outdoor was significant. And we don't have a provision that addresses, say, something like you would not require parking for outdoor dining if it's, say, up to 50% of indoor. In other words, the
Yeah.
outdoor would never be the more significant piece
Right.
of the
I would have
seating.
thought what would make sense is to have a requirement for parking based on how many total seats you have. Indoor or outdoor shouldn't matter.
Correct, and that's a viable option too, but it's the way the code is
Not the way the
currently
code is
written and
written right
applied.
now.
And-
So
And
another
when we
one
get,
that would be
and when we
useful
get to
look
that
at.
point,
Yeah.
we need to discuss parking as a whole, for
Yes.
the whole city, rather than having every single store have parking in their property, because that isn't really appropriate for downtown.
Okay,
So there's a lot of work we have to do.
there is.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes based on those
As-
two changes
As amended.
Thank you.
as amended.
As extending the comments of Commissioner Corbin and Commissioner Lottis.
Exactly.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. Any other discussion? Could we have a vote on that, Sherry?
Jagiello?
Yes.
Quirk?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quillisi?
Yes.
Lottis.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm abstaining because I was not present at that meeting.
Lottis.
Yes.
Okay, next is disclosure of site visits and ex parte contacts. Chester?
Been to the site, no ex parte contact.
I'm familiar with the site and did not have any ex parte contacts.
I'm also familiar with the site, had no ex parte contacts.
I am also familiar with the site, had no ex parte contacts.
And I did visit the site, but I will be recusing myself on this item due to a potential conflict of interest,
Okay,
not act.
Huh.
very good. Then we will go on to the public hearing item, item number 2, design review permit DRP 18-008 and tree permit T 18-018 for the installation of 6 Tesla charging cabinets and 12 Tesla charging posts for electric vehicle charging and associated equipment, and work in the drip line of protected oak trees located in the parking lot at 987 West Ojai Avenue. And for reference to our virtual audience here, that is the Boku occupied property. I would like to ask our Community Development Director, is it, in your experience, appropriate, since we have no applicant here, is it appropriate to deal with this case, or would it be more appropriate to continue this to a date certain and hope that we have an applicant show up?
My experience, Mr. Chair, is that you can have the hearing. I mean, the only handicap could be is if you have questions for the applicant that only the applicant can answer. So I can give a staff report and discuss this as well as I'm able to, but if there's specific questions, I know I had met with the applicant, I believe, a month and a half or so ago, and they had planned to attend. I'm not sure why they're not here this evening. But there's nothing preventing you from having the hearing on this item.
Yeah, I think we should at least talk about it then. Okay. Well, let's have the staff report then,
Okay, thank
because
you,
I do
Mr.
have some questions there too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This is a design review permit and tree permit for, again, 6 charging cabinets and 12 electric vehicle charging posts. The posts are similar to what you'd see outside here in the parking lot. The charging cabinets are largely the driver for this being a design review permit and a public hearing because of their larger size and the screening involved. They involve more of a change to the site. My understanding of these from speaking with the applicant is that why they are sort of Tesla specific is these are kind of the next wave of superchargers that charge vehicles much more quickly. The other hybrids and electrical vehicles, this is like half the time what you would typically have. And it's also my understanding from talking to them is why they're Tesla specific is only Teslas at this time can accommodate this technology. So perhaps in the future it wouldn't be Tesla specific.
So it may pose a danger to someone with a different type of electric vehicle plugging in.
It could, and my understanding is it's sort of, the charging is too powerful for what a lot of the batteries in a typical hybrid car could take, which is why they're very much targeted to Tesla drivers. So that was the one clarification. Obviously, the applicant could speak to more so, and that's not really a land use issue, but that's the reason it's so clearly aimed at that one type of vehicle.
Okay.
I think a lot of what's in the staff report, again, is fairly self-explanatory. This is site changes. It's not something manned or habited or something increasing traffic. It's involving a change to the site at the Boku property. One thing I know that did not get in the finding for the resolution that I just want to clarify should the issue come up is that there's a code provision in the zoning ordinance section 10-2.2009 that has to do with permitted development along state highways, mostly with preserving open space
It's
and
the
views.
TCO overlay.
That's actually a different provision, and that's 10-2703. I wrote it down in case there were questions. That doesn't require findings be made. The other section, 10-2009, does, which we would add to the resolution. Again, there's 7 of these findings that have to do with open space preservation and not worsening traffic conditions. In the case of this, we're not impacting open space or adding traffic, but since that is a code provision to make those findings and this does access directly off a state highway, we should include those in the resolution, and they're not presently in there.
Okay.
So it's-
Well, that may be one more reason to wait to hear from the applicant at some other date.
And I know one other thing too in the report, and based on my earlier meeting with the applicant, I believe they're presenting this as really an option 1, option 2 in terms of screening the cabinets, which are the larger pieces of equipment.
Yep.
Option 1 would be, the way it's described in the staff report, is an 8-foot tall solid fence. One issue with that is our code doesn't allow an 8-foot fence.
Anywhere on the property?
Not without a variance. The limit is a 6-foot fence anywhere. A minor variance, which the director could approve, would allow a 20% increase, which gets you to a little over 7 feet, but not 8. So that fence height would have to be held down to 6 feet, or if they wanted to pursue a minor variance to say 7 feet.
There's no people in the pictures of these charging cabinets, so I don't know how tall they are. Are they 6 feet, or are they taller
There, I
than that?
believe it's in the elevations. The charging posts are 5.5, and the charging cabinets, I think, are a little over 6,
Okay.
maybe up to 7, but they're not 8 feet. But also the option 2 in here was that we had talked about with the applicant of providing screening without essentially, in screening something, not trying to build something where the screen is even more obvious than what it's trying to screen. And I think that's why option 2 was in here, that try to handle that, since this is set over 100 feet back from the roadway, to try to handle that more with landscaping and not call attention to the equipment rather than building this enclosure around it that is obviously an enclosure. Was my understanding from the applicant that 8-foot fence, or whatever the height would be, was not needed for security purposes. So landscaping should suffice in that case. But that was just the conversation we'd had. I'd hoped they might have been here to explain that more themselves.
Okay.
And that was about all I had. So feel free to answer any questions you may have.
Well, I'd like just one comment at the very beginning. Thank you. I would like to compliment, Luke, you and your staff on the admin report. It was thorough, it had citations throughout, and obviously we don't know what we don't know, so if there was a citation missing, I think that ought to be added in. But other than that, I was very impressed with the report, both in its completeness and the thorough vetting of what the rules are and where they apply and from where they apply. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Please, go ahead. You have a question.
Well, when I first looked at this packet and just kind of briefly glanced at it, my first assumption was that this was going to take place in that parking lot next to the Topper Mountain Winery that the inn owns. And actually, I think
That
it-
would have been the southeast corner of the
Yes.
property rather than
And
the
I-
southwest, yeah.
you're facing it, it's to the left. And they've already come and asked about parking in there. They did a concept review for them there.
Right, this is at the, this is.
And this
at
is
the
in the, then I
end by the
realized it
Y,
was in the
yeah.
Boku parking lot. I honestly think it would be more appropriate in the other parking lot, which is a parking lot that I would also love to see the city investigate possibly using as public parking. I'm troubled by this project in the Boku parking lot for several reasons. Boku stated that they're planning to have all sorts of, I don't know what, going on at their location, and that was
Events.
part of the reason why they were allowed, even though I wasn't in favor of it, to have their manufacturing plant there, because they were going to have auxiliary uses, and we don't exactly even know what all those auxiliary uses are going to be. And I look at this as just another thing, and I wonder how disjointed and disharmonious this whole project is going to wind up being. And it's on an obvious site when you first come into town. Now, Boku has gone to great lengths to give that building a kind of touchy-feely kind of facelift. I don't exactly know how I would describe the color of the walls that they used and the bright blue, but you know, it's fine and it's cheerful. I think that in all the pictures I've looked at Tesla charging stations, and I assumed any car could charge there. I didn't know that it was specific to certain things. They kind of look like a Jetsons gas station, and they're beautifully designed, but very much in contrast with what's there. And for me, I don't really think it's appropriate to have that littering the parking lot with the yellow stanchions and the yellow stripes in the parking lot and the red and white, and then you've got the bright blue on the building. All together, I don't think it's visually very appealing, and I don't think either one enhances the other. And if it's got limited use in terms of the number of people who can actually service their car there, then it makes me unhappy with the project even more, and think that maybe it's even less appropriate. My suggestion would have been, which is totally in the opposite kind of design realm of Tesla, is if they were going to have these parking spaces with these 5-foot red and white, modern, nicely designed, but not appropriate for that building, that at least if they built sort of an arbor or something over that area, that would be what you saw with something growing on it, as opposed to these, you know, very nicely designed things, that it would be more appropriate for the building and would perhaps give it a nicer view. Now we've got boxes and posts and stripes and stanchions. I don't think that it holds together very well visually, and I don't necessarily think it makes the best statement for entering into town. Last night we looked at the plans to really improve our streets, improve the feeling of what it's like when you come into town. And I think this is totally anathema to that whole kind of feel. So I'm not sure that I think this is the best location for this project.
Okay,
And I don't know exactly how much of a public service it will provide if, in fact, it is specific to certain types of cars.
Let me just, in the absence of the applicant, just again reeling our conversation, and it's like, I think the theory that they would have said tonight is by having this attract Teslas, it would free up other existing electric chargers where Tesla vehicles would not be at those. Because if you had a Tesla, this is going to charge your car much faster. So non-Teslas could say use the other vehicle chargers that
Well,
would be nearby.
it's not, yes, but then if that would be appropriate, if 3/4 of the population had a Tesla, and maybe they will one day, but I don't think, I know you do, but most
I
of
don't,
us
I
don't.
don't, just so you know. I
Okay.
don't, I want to say that on the public record. I probably have to
Oh, okay, I
recuse
forget, you
myself.
got some new car that was nice, I don't remember. But anyway, so I'm just saying that if we're saying, well, it's for the public good, that's kind of limited, and I don't necessarily think that is a true fact, so that's all I have to say.
Any other members have questions for staff? That's kind of where we are right now. Chester? No. John?
Staff.
I think our applicants just arrived,
Oh, good.
I believe.
Okay. So Luke, I guess my question would be, is there any requirement for screening on these, or, I mean, it's not really something that we cover anywhere?
It's not terribly specific. Where you have security issues, that would generally merit that. But again, maybe we can hear more about that. I understand this is not a security issue. I mean, typically you try to screen. I mean, I look at this kind of like 20 years ago when you were getting monopoles and cell equipment coming in, and everybody wanted it and no one wanted to see the infrastructure. And there were a lot of things to try to screen all the cabinets and then to try to make them look like trees or whatever you wanted. This is, to me, that next wave of its technology that's going to increase. You're going to get more and more applications like this. You'll probably develop regulations that are tailored and more specific to it. Because I had not seen the cabinets like this before. I'm used to just sort of the charging stations. But again, as these are getting more powerful, there's more equipment going with them.
But they're cabinets that could have been cabinets for
Any
traffic light control or for
electrical
telephone,
transformers could be
whatever, yeah.
correct.
Just a big gray box.
Correct. And that's what I mean, my preference in discussing this with the applicant was I don't see any reason to build a solid wall bigger than what you're trying to screen because
Yeah.
unless you want a potential graffiti area in the future or having people's eyes drawn more to that wall, it would probably be easier to soften it with landscaping or at a minimum some type of an open fence with landscaping growing up it.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. In your experience, and
I thought
did-
they were here.
Maybe he was trying to find where he needs to be, maybe he doesn't know.
This seems like the
let's
obvious
pause
spot,
for a moment and
but
see if we can find the applicant.
I'm pretty sure that was them.
Yeah.
He didn't know.
Good.
You're
All
up.
right, the applicant has arrived. Very good. Please have a seat. Yeah, we started at 6 o'clock. Is it in your experience that an application of this sort would be done by a third party, neither the property owner nor the property occupier? It just seemed odd to me.
I think, again, like cell equipment, that's generally done by a lease where they're not the property owner. So for things like this, where if it's essentially unmanned, it's equipment, you're leasing space,
Right.
that is pretty common. I mean, even in this case, Boku's not the property owner.
Right.
And they're leasing a site that Ojai Valley Inn and Spa owns. So this is essentially another lease, but it's just not a habitable building or an actual active land use. So yeah,
Okay.
that part's not surprising.
Do we have anything from, well, but perhaps this is a better question for the applicant, but do we have any record, any written record that both Boku and the inn are okay with this project?
I would let the applicant address that. I've not seen anything say in writing that,
Okay.
you know, what,
I mean, I'd hate to have someone come in.
excuse me, I
and-
see a hand up.
and-
The property owner signed all the applications for it. They're required to sign the applications.
Oh, okay.
So the inn did
Well,
then.
that would,
Yeah.
Right.
that would be a written concurrence of a sort then. Okay. I noted that this requires taking out 4 parking spaces, and I do not remember what the parking requirement is for Boku, but are they still okay with the number of parking spaces they have, taking 4 out?
That I did not honestly look at what their demand was. I know when I've gone by the site, it always appears fairly empty, and I think it was,
And there's a lot of parking
Yeah.
toward the east end of the site.
there's an awful lot of parking there, but I also do know too, they had a variety of uses. I think their day-to-day use for their facility isn't that much because it's a manufacturing use, which generally doesn't drive a lot of parking. If you're having something like a farmer's market there, though, that could have a heck of a lot of parking,
Sure.
which I had seen on an earlier plan for that site. But I don't have an analysis for whether those 4 spaces that would be lost, if that would create an impact or not on Boku's operation.
Well, I'd like to know.
Okay.
I notice on page 3 of 4, the public art ordinance paragraph of the staff report, it says if the valuation of the project is estimated to be $300,000 or more by the building official, then certain requirements kick in. Do they in this case? What is the project valuation?
That has not happened yet at this point in time. That would come after, if the discretionary approval were to take place, the valuation would happen after.
Okay, so we don't need to know.
Correct. I think we're just laying that out, that if that were to happen, they would be subject to the
Okay.
public art, but the valuation takes place at a later time.
Okay, because I was kind of curious if, in fact, public art addition would make any sense here.
It's a good question.
Yeah. All right. I guess probably a better question for the applicant in terms of what sort of work is proposed under the trees and referring back to the arborist's report. I do have a question on, you mentioned traffic, Luke. This generates no traffic. Just looking at it from the outside as a non-Tesla owner, I'll say, I would see if I owned Boku, that if I were putting in charging stations, that Tesla stations would be very nice because they would attract Tesla customers, which are presumably somewhat more affluent than the average and probably the kind of customers I'd like to have. But it also could draw Tesla owners that might not otherwise be inclined to stop at Boku any particular time. And it might draw them into the Boku area on a fairly frequent basis. And I'm wondering, is that kind of thought any part of a traffic analysis or a traffic consideration for this project?
I don't know that it would be a traffic consideration so much as parking. It could go to that. I don't think you're gonna have like a traffic impact per se, but if, as you said, the spaces were occupied by people charging vehicles solely, where they're not going to the other use on site, then.
And it's a long walk to anywhere else except Boku
Yeah.
from this area.
Then in a sense, yeah, those spaces where a charging station's available, if they're all occupied, that could be parking that's not serving other on-site uses. Presumably, you would be doing something else in the area while the vehicle's charging, whether you were at
Walk
Boku
over to the Y and buy some groceries, who knows? Okay,
or into downtown. But yes, correct. You're not obligated, if you were charging your vehicle, to be at Boku.
yeah, all right. Let me see. Oh, just as a general request, not necessarily to change anything here, at the bottom of page 2, attachment A, page 2 of 6, section 2, it refers to provisions of Article 30 of the Ojai Municipal Code. It's Title 10, Article 30. I don't know if there's an Article 30 in any of the other titles. I haven't read them all.
I don't believe there is, but that's.
Probably not, yeah.
Wait a minute.
On page 3 of 6, though, condition 8, it refers to Article 12 without mentioning a title. Maybe it should be just part of the standard language somewhere to say that references to chapters and articles and specific sections refer to Title 10 unless otherwise specified. That would take care of it. And if you see what I mean.
Actually, yes, and I just was going back to the first one where we were talking
Yeah.
about Article 30 at the bottom of page 2. That actually is a correct reference, because that's talking about Article 30 of the code pertains to appeals. So it's referencing that if this were appealed, that provision's pretty much saying the planning commission's decision is final
Mm-hmm.
unless appealed under Article 30, in which
Under
case it would go to the
Title
city
10,
council.
Article 30, yeah.
Title 10,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
It just could be made clearer by referencing the title, not jumping right to the article.
Yes, the same would be true of condition 8 on page 3, and I did have a question on condition 5 on page 3. It looks like there's a B, the second line there. Maybe condition 5 had an A and a B at one point,
I
and now
see
it
what
only
you
has a
mean.
B.
Right, we
And
could probably just delete that and make it a
that
period.
B reference, yeah, okay.
Yep.
And I guess my other questions are for the applicant, so. Any other questions for staff? All right, well, let's hear from the applicant then. Who's going to be taking the first shot at this? Please come to the lectern. Sure. Or podium. Which one? It's a lectern, isn't it? If it were a short thing sitting on a table, it might be a podium. Or is it the other way around?
Not quite sure.
Okay. Please identify yourself and your affiliation, and then have at it.
Sure, my name is Jorge Rosa. I'm the permitting specialist for Tesla.
Okay?
My name is Thomas Fullen, and I'm a project developer for Tesla.
Okay, very good. Which of you would care to start?
I can give you just some quick background on kind of the Tesla supercharger and what we plan on doing here. Kind of the history of Tesla and the supercharger network was really, in the beginning, we looked at it as sort of an intercity model, right? So you suddenly have a Tesla, and it's like, how do I get from, Santa Barbara to San Luis Obispo or to San Francisco or down in Los Angeles? And so we started dotting the map and literally built an entire network all the way across the country. From the early days, we really thought of this as just a necessary, necessary infrastructure to advance electric vehicles. And then what we found over time was that a lot of local users were using these stations. And now we have the Model 3, which is the most affordable Tesla model. We actually just delivered a record number of Model 3s this past quarter. And
5,000 a month?
yeah, more. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we did. And so we're starting to see some more usage on our network. And we really, now it's really more about just, being at different, smaller cities, destination places, weekend destination places, lifestyle centers. So when we were approached by Boku, we thought this would be a really good idea to do this project in Ojai. Our nearest one is actually down in Oxnard. So more of the kind of the urban, I would say the urban Tesla superchargers get a pretty substantial volume, especially up in San Francisco, some down in LA. You won't see that kind of volume here. It'll probably get a little bit peaky now and then. If there's a big, some of your festivals and things in the summer might get a little busy. Other than that, on the daily use, it's really not going to be too substantial. But it's just a great way to, really kind of advance more electric vehicles and kind of head us in the direction of getting off fossil fuels.
Okay.
As far as the project itself, did you want to go through how many stalls are we doing here?
Total is 12.
Yeah, 12. So it would be 12 superchargers. The superchargers generally a dwell time of about 45 minutes. So kind of a perfect fit. I know that Boku has got some plans for their property, and certainly it's nice amenity just to be close to the Ojai Valley Trail as well. And so yeah, there is some related equipment. You guys probably have seen that in the plans, and so we were open to your ideas on whether that could be, needs to be screened or landscaped or something like that, or is some related equipment. We did have an arborist report, as you know, so we plan on protecting the oak trees, obviously. But yeah, it's basically kind of the nuts and bolts of it are 12 supercharger individual parking stalls. There's 6 related cabinets. So there's one cabinet that feeds 2 charging posts, and then there's switch gear on top of that. So that's kind of real the nuts and bolts of all the equipment that'll be on site.
Okay.
We were questioning whether only a Tesla could use these.
Yeah, yes, that's true. There are a couple different charging standards out there. Most of the public infrastructure you're seeing right now is the level 2. So you guys have a charge point right out here in the parking lot. That's a universal level 2 charger. We look at that as a great solution for either home or office, and the reason being because it takes a really long time to get a substantial charge, depending on the size of your battery. I drive a Chevy Bolt. If I kind of pulled up to one of those stations, it would take me to get a full charge probably almost 6 hours. So it's just not a great public sort of infrastructure. The charger. The Tesla, on the other hand, is so we do the superchargers, and they're 45 minutes. It is our own standard. We're one of the few companies really out there that's putting this kind of money into public infrastructure.
Another question I have is, did you look at any other potential sites in the town other than this one?
We certainly looked at the Vaughn's location, and that was of interest to us. We just haven't really. We'd love to build out a bunch of their sites in all over California. They really just haven't been that responsive.
Well, you missed my comments before you got here. And my concern is having all these cabinets and all these charging stations in this particular parking lot right at the entrance to town. This building has stood empty for a very long time. Boku has just refurbished it. And while I think that your equipment, not your boxes, but perhaps your charging stations are nicely designed, I think they're in contrast with what Boku has done with their building. I find the two together very disharmonious, and I think it would be kind of an eyesore, quite frankly, between the yellow posts and the yellow stripes in the parking lot and the red and white and their woodsy kind of thing with the bright blue. They don't say hello to each other in any possible way, and I'm wondering, if there weren't another potential place where they could have gone. There's a piece of property that the Ojai Valley Inn owns next to the Topa Mountain Winery, and Topa Mountain Winery wants to use that as a parking lot, and it is kind of screened and not very visible, and that potentially would have been a great place to put them, I think, and it's just slightly down the road. So I'm troubled by this, in addition to whatever else Boku thinks they want to add into this project. And one of the reasons that they were allowed to put their manufacturing plant in, which really isn't appropriate in that zone, is because they said they were going to have auxiliary uses. And they came in with a whole litany of kind of like crunchy, earthy, wonderful, isn't Ojai going to love? We're going to have a farmer's market and exercise and yoga classes. And then we've got the Jetsons gas station right here, which, while it's lovely, it seems to me inappropriate in that particular site. And there's a lot of visibility when people come into town. We also have a plan to redo our streets. We got a big grant. We're going to be adding bike paths and trying to get people out of their cars and putting in trees as you come into town. And it's just, it's kind of the opposite approach to what Ojai sort of stands for and what Ojai is trying to do in refurbishing its streets. So I'm not saying that it doesn't belong somewhere. I'm just questioning whether it belongs in that particular site where not very far down the road is another site that might have been more appropriate and has the same owner. So that was my problem with this project. I also don't know if there's some way that you could have, built some kind of a structure that would kind of bring those particular parking spaces together and maybe screen them a little bit better in a more appropriate way for that building and for that particular location. So I'm sure that's not what you want to hear, but for me, I think this is an unfortunate location for your product.
We're certainly open to your ideas on how we can, sort of blend this into the environment. We have done plenty of landscape type screenings and open to your ideas on any of that.
And is there any possibility you would consider speaking to the inn about that other parking area down the street? Because they've come to us for a concept review about using that for parking because they need extra parking, and it's just a piece of property that's sitting there that is unused. It's much easier to screen it from the street, and it is very close to this one.
Sure, and part of what Tesla's working on with what we're trying to provide to our customers is amenities available. So just a parking lot with chargers doesn't really work for the concept of what we're trying to do. So for the most part, these superchargers are put where there's, let's say, a Starbucks, a Target, some kind of shopping center, something that somebody can get out of their car if they're doing that long travel, be able to grab some food, do some quick grocery shopping, whatever it may be. So that's kind of part of what goes hand in hand with the kind of the layout, the design, and what we kind of try to build for people.
Right, well, that parcel is about a 2-minute walk down the street right next to a tasting room. So, that's certainly not like it's like it's in a whole different neighborhood at the other
Sure,
end.
no,
of
I totally
town.
get it. And part of it too is the family part. I mean, you don't really take your kids into a tasting room at a winery. That's usually more of like the destination chargers that we do, like the level 2s for Tesla. And
Yeah, but
again,
you
it's
could
not-
walk 2 minutes to something else.
Sure, no, I totally understand where you're coming from and the idea. Like we said, we're more than happy to try to make something work that works.
I just think that it's totally anathema to everything that everybody complains about in Ojai, and maybe I'm the only one who feels that way, but to me, and believe me, one of my biggest beefs in Ojai is that we don't have more modern architecture, but this isn't my idea of that.
Sure.
Chester?
I just have a few questions. Hi, how are you?
How you doing?
Who is the beneficiary of the financial relationship with Tesla? Is it the Ojai Valley Inn or is it Boku?
This is just a pure amenity for Tesla drivers.
No, I know, but who are you in contract with? Who are you going to be in contract with, the Ojai Valley Inn or Boku?
I guess it's both, because right now Ojai Valley Inn owns the Boca property.
Right. So, if the company that sponsors this type of installation, do they get a financial benefit from that?
No, they don't.
They don't. It's just a draw then, to the local
Correct.
site. Okay, that was one thing I wanted to clarify for the public. I think this is, my opinion is this, is that charging stations all look very similar. If you look out there at those posts out across the street, they're not that much different. And this is a technology that we're just heading for at warp speed. And it's gonna happen, and it's gonna happen in every parking lot. In my research, it's going to happen. Whether it's a Tesla-sponsored facility or not, they all look pretty close to the same. They're not that different for me to be
There's a big box and a post.
Yeah,
Sure.
to make the Tesla ones so different than the ones out front, which I don't like either. They're red on the inside line, so there's a red line on them.
Well, then let
No.
me just say, I think Tesla definitely has the resources to show us that they can screen these things in a way that will make them look a little bit
So that's
more
my next point.
appropriate.
Let me continue. So my next point is since the actual podium, whatever you want to call it, the charging station, the post, is similar enough to what's out there. I think just an appropriate screening of landscape would be more than appropriate to deal with the objection of the unit. And as far as it being just exclusively Tesla, there are a lot of Teslas here, and they do come here. If you just watch how many of those vehicles come to Ojai, I was going to buy one, haven't bought one yet, but I have test drive a Model 3. After a while, it's like looking for Volkswagens. Once you get it in your head, you see them everywhere, and the Teslas are here a lot. So if it's not in this parking lot, it's going to be in the next parking lot. It's going to be in Vaughn's. They're going to be everywhere.
I'd rather see it in a different parking lot.
But they're
I'm
going to
not
be in
saying
every
that I
park. They're
don't.
going to be in every parking lot. They really are.
Maybe
Oh,
not.
they
Yes,
will be.
eventually they
will
might be.
I mean,
but
look at the investment the city made in over here in our charging
but
station.
nobody sees this.
I know. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why they're going to be
mean,
more and more in the commercial parking lot.
Parking
just
lot of
because,
Libby Bowl, perfect place to put it.
and that's my point. They're being put in destination points where people are coming to, and they're going to be in almost every destination park. In Topa Topa Winery, I don't know what Larry's plan is, but I would highly.
It's not his, it's the inn's parking lot.
No, I know. I'm talking about other businesses now, that will eventually have charging stations because the demand is so great. I mean, the market is moving in that direction. In 10 years or 20 years, there's probably not going to be a gas-driven vehicle on this planet. I mean, it's really moving in that direction at warp speed. And you've done the research on this. Anybody who does the research can see where that's going. So my point is that whether it's a Tesla charging station or a regular charging station, it's the wave of the future of e-vehicles, which are great for the environment. So I'm in full support of that. And if we could just, put some screening around them, I think then it's totally solves all my issues with it, with landscaping.
Are we talking about screening that whole parking lot so that you don't see it? That probably would be the most appropriate in this particular site.
Or you can have a line of bushes that they're inset into as well. Like if you have, like in this drawing here, if you had on either side of the charging station.
I should mention that we actually have an alternative charger unit. It's a little bit shorter. It's actually, we call it, for lack of a better term, an urban post. It's a little bit shorter. Those ones that you see in the plans are actually a little bit better for power sharing when it's one car, but we do have a shorter urban post. I'm not sure the exact dimensions. It's probably only like 3 feet high and not very wide, really sort of low profile. So that's something we would be glad to consider for this project.
I would love to see a picture of that.
I'm pulling one
Yeah.
up right now for you.
'Cause that could be very well be a good.
And that, the real, I think, what I'm hearing, the concern is really more on the equipment side. The cabinets and switchgear, you're going to have switchgear and meter pedestals associated with every sort of EV charging. So I think that's really where, the sort of landscaping needs to be if we're to hide it and make it. To hide it and make it
fair.
low profile.
So are there any options on the colors for these, or you just,
No.
they're all,
No, they're not.
The two, if it's the 120, which is the larger one, it's the way it is, and then if it's the 72 kW, it would be that where it's
Just an off-white,
with the
yeah.
with the little T on it.
Yeah.
pretty low profile. So if we did those kind of a short, real, I mean, they're hidden once the car sort of pulls up and they're sort of right behind it. It's really more now, it's just a matter of the equipment. It's really hiding the cabinets and switch.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, I would like to see your attempt at a landscaping
Okay.
plan for this before I would say I'm comfortable with it.
Well, would, on the, just a thought, everybody saw the other charger. What's that one called again?
That's the 72 kW.
72 kW, and the red ones are called what?
They're 120. So basically, it's just saying
Okay.
the wattage that it has.
So, so you're open to use the 72 Ks? You're open to that?
But that then takes almost twice as long to charge.
It does not.
You said the other one was 120 kilowatts?
Correct. So the way it works on those posts is that they actually power share, right? So we're saying one cabinet per each post. So if somebody's using slot A and then somebody comes in slot B, then they're at 72 at that point. So what we've created with the urban charger, the 72 kW, is that they're all at a constant 72 kW. So the amount that it would add to the charging would probably be about maybe another 15-20 minutes to get it to that 80% from 0 to 80 that we count at like 40 minutes. So looking at it, maybe about 55 minutes, you'll get that same type of charge. And it's still an amenity that most of our customers are very happy to have available. It's still faster than any kind of level 2 that they'd be able to go and plug into. So it still works within the idea of what we're trying to build here. And again, the idea is to work with the city as much as possible to make sure the aesthetics, because I've driven through here, it's beautiful, I love it. And I understand the idea of trying to preserve that as much as we move into the technology side. And that's kind of why we built this 72 kW charge post. Usually they're in parking garages, they're just because they're smaller and things like that, but this may be a perfect case to use it out in a regular parking.
Okay, so the originally proposed posts run at 72 if they're feeding 2 cars. But
Correct.
you said there were 12 posts
Correct.
for 6 cabinets.
Correct.
So it's not it's one post per parking space, right?
That's correct.
But
Okay,
one
but you're still
cabinet-
sharing 2 posts
Correct.
with 1 cabinet, okay. So it'll run at 120 until somebody pulls in to the other post.
Correct.
Exactly.
I see, okay.
And then if we go with the smaller one, they're just always at 72.
They're always at 72, yeah, okay.
Yes, that's really not a big deal from a charging experience.
Again, just looking at that picture of the 72, I mean, I don't know how more simple you can get with a white post for a charging station. So to me, I just don't have any objection to that at all. I mean, no screening even necessary. I
For
mean,
me,
yeah.
the big boxes are what we ought to consider screening, the little short posts.
Right.
Not so
Doesn't seem,
much.
yeah, especially if a car's parked in front of it, you just won't even see it. It will be insignificant. And I do like the 72 ones better. I mean, it just totally, the size and everything, it just completely kind of disappears. And as far as the big boxes go, I agree with Luke as far as the putting a fence in front of a large thing just is like a
The
waste
fence would
of
be
effort.
more obtrusive than the box.
Exactly. So I think we just have some nice landscape screening and call it good. I mean, it's good technology.
Would you not like to see their attempt at landscaping?
Well,
Or are you just gonna say, oh, these guys look great, I'll trust them, and you'll wind up with
how does
one
that
Well,
ultimately?
that's not exactly what I had in mind.
Well,
I mean,
let's-
That's happened in town.
I just have, well, there was proposed 2 options here, to screen them with landscape. So what does that mean, ultimately?
Who's the
Commissioner Corbin
judge
is
of
saying,
enough?
who's judging the screening?
I think you would have 2 options. Very often, landscape plans come in after discretionary approvals as a requirement to submit for different projects, and that's usually at staff level, doesn't go back to a public hearing. So that's the most common. Since this is, a more atypical project, and if it's a bigger issue, I don't know how you feel, if it was something where you wanted to actually see the plan for what the landscape plan would look like. I know when we had talked, I think you were very open, which is why we wrote the staff report with 2 options, to not put the 8-foot Trex wall in.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we left
I have
it
a
that way.
suggestion then. Would you mind then updating your plan with the 72 watt and include a landscape plan for the screening of the big equipment?
Definitely.
Then I would move to
Okay.
have, continue the meeting at a date certain
Yeah,
with, let them bring that to the meeting and then we can evaluate it then.
okay. Oh, we don't even have a quorum tonight, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. There's 4 of us here.
Hmm?
4 is a quorum.
Oh, I thought we needed
Even,
5.
even with the recusal, we still have a quorum.
Yeah.
I thought we needed 5. I
Um,
stand corrected.
So, any more question, but see, that's what I would move to do then. I
Okay.
would move, I'd like the 72s, I think they're low profile. We ask for a landscape plan to show the screening, and then we review it at that time.
And they might also, it would give us time, because you had raised a parking question with how Boku interacts.
Right?
So,
We could get
Right.
that answer at that time too.
I
So-
still have a few questions, too. John,
I'm going to second
comments
Chester's
and
motion.
questions?
I'm just going to, I think, if you guys can come back to us,
Sounds like a good,
show us.
yeah. We'll
Show us what you can
discuss,
do
we'll
with this.
discuss
Sounds good.
when,
Yeah.
when we get to the rest of this.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a discussion of work under the drip lines of 4 oak trees, I think. Okay. What are we talking about doing there? Is it removal of asphalt, lay some wire, and then put new asphalt down? Are you doing trenching that would be potentially harmful to these oak trees?
No, so that's part of our arborist report is to make sure.
Okay, can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. that's
Yeah,
right.
so,
We need you on the verbal record. as
Sorry about that, yeah. So part of the arborist report that we had is ensuring that we're protecting the oak trees through everything that we're doing. So we're making sure that we're staying outside of the canopy and the rooting. The work that would happen underneath, the idea is just so if we have people and they're doing the work and things like that, but all the trenching, all the new asphalt and everything would be outside of that.
Outside the drip lines?
Correct, yes.
Okay. But there's some asphalt removal and replacement that's
There would be.
inside?
Correct.
Okay, okay. I noticed, I read the arborist's report. I've recently paid for one on my own property, so I pay a little more attention to them now. One of the things that the arborist suggested in the case of each of these 4 trees was clearing out the deadwood. Is that something you plan to do?
If it was part of the report, I think that's just a recommendation from the
Yes, it
arborist.
is, just a
Our plan was not to
recommendation.
touch the trees at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That, what I thought was probably right.
Correct.
Okay. And just for top-level kind of question, I know that around the city, we have city-operated charging stations, some of which cost to use and some of which may still be free. I'm not sure, Luke, anymore. Are these charging stations that you plan to put in going to cost anyone to use them, or is this all just free Boku electricity for whoever shows up?
Sure. So the way it works now is depending on when you purchased your vehicle is the free use of superchargers. So if you purchased your Model S or X prior to 2017, 2017, you would be on the supercharger for life. No charge to you whatsoever. Now with the rollout of the Model 3 and this being more of a, more of a mass vehicle, there would be charges to the user, but the interface is all through the Tesla app. So nobody has to pull out a credit card or there would be no payment structure there. It's when you actually plug the vehicle into the car, then
The charger knows who you are
That's
and
pretty-
whether
yes.
to charge you for
Correct.
using the electricity.
Correct.
Okay.
And Tesla does establish a separate service, so it's not from Boku Electricity. We just establish our own service with SoCal Edison.
Okay,
our- on
so
our
you
own.
have, you have your own electric
meter,
drop
yeah.
then
Yeah.
and meter.
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
we've already done a feasibility study with SoCal Edison.
Okay. Just for grins, is the project valuation, I'm not sure how you even count these kinds of things, Luke, but is this project, in your estimation, larger or smaller than 300,000?
Typically, anything that we've built is 150,000 is our evaluation, and those
Okay.
are for anything that we've built throughout Southern California.
Okay, well, we'll leave you to Luke's tender mercies on that number then.
Sure.
Congestion, there, there. Okay, I'm in complete agreement that landscape-type screening is the right thing to do here. I do think that the screening is necessary for the big equipment boxes, but not for the little charging posts. I did want to ask, this is on, oh, I tear it out. This is the last page of pictures that you provided to us. And it has in the small inset existing and then proposed, and I saw no landscaping. Some of these were proposed with landscaping and some without?
Sure.
In terms of the exhibits that you provided?
Correct, yeah, we were asked to provide both samples so you guys could see what it
I
would
see.
look like with or without, and then have the decision made on what would be best for us with the city.
One,
And so on the revision, we'll make sure that we have photo simulations that include the landscaping.
okay. Just one last question. Referring back to the arborist's report, you had proposed to put fences around these 4 oak trees to protect them while you're doing your construction work. And according to your drawings, as page C, sheet C9, you're going to have posts every 12 feet with 2x4s making a rail, and then I guess you've got some kind of screening that goes down there. The arborist recommended 10 feet versus 12. Are there any structural problems that you see with the larger distance between posts? People are going to bump into them and knock them down where they wouldn't if they were 10 feet like the arborist recommended?
No, not that I would see, but of course we can go ahead and have that conversation with the arborist one more time to make sure that we're doing it in
Okay.
the best way possible.
Okay, that's all of my questions.
I'm
So
ready to
what-
make a motion.
Okay, well,
We have a motion on the
Yeah.
floor, and it's been
we have a
seconded.
motion on the floor to an unspecified date certain, to continue this and have you come back and provide us with more answers. What, as you may know, the Planning Commission meets the first and third Wednesdays of each calendar month. So
November 7 and
November
21
7th
are your
and
next two.
21st would be the next 2 meetings. And before we continue this to a date certain, which relieves the city of the requirement to go notice all the neighbors again and publish in the paper and all that kind of stuff, what's a good date for you to come back and see us? Or is it beyond November 21st? There's 2 meetings in December, or at least one probably.
No, I would think November 21st would be sufficient enough time for us to have our A&E firms work on the material that's needed for the
Okay, and that's-
following meeting.
21st is the end of the 3rd week, so Thursday, that is Wednesday before Thanksgiving.
Oh, God, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. Because that, usually, that meeting can be hit and miss. Because we may have
I
3
agree.
Yeah.
commissioners gone,
So
so
the first one in
that's not
December.
good.
And I would suggest, because you're one
Then-
short of
then
a quorum now, if you one
December
more
5th would be
commissioners out.
the next following meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say,
That would be better.
yeah, December
Yeah.
5th. Just November 7th would be too close to,
Thanksgiving.
yeah. No, the November
No,
7th
November 7th,
one.
oh.
Yeah, just.
November 7th is too soon.
Too soon, yeah,
November
to make sure that we
21st
have
is
everything
iffy.
ready to
Okay.
go. Yeah, so
Yeah.
December 5th would
So,
work.
are you open to an amendment to your motion to specify December 5th?
Yes, December 5th would be fine.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
and a second. Any more discussion? All right, can we have a roll call on that, Sherry?
Jagiello?
Yes.
Merck?
Yes.
Corbin?
Yes.
Quillisi?
Yes. Okay, then we'll see you on the 5th.
Perfect.
Thank you very much,
Thank you guys so
gentlemen.
much for your time.
All right, our next agenda item is director's decisions. Is that right? No. 3. Okay. But I don't see them here. They're not in the packet, but item 2 correspond, tab 2 in the packet corresponds to item 2. Oh, ha-ha. All All right. Item 2 in the agenda is the public hearing item, which we've just concluded. Then item 3 is future agenda items, so we don't have space for director decisions. But let's call it 2.5, and what's going on?
Director decisions only come the first meeting of every month.
Thank you very much.
That's what I thought, but I'm glad you
A new
clarified
rule,
that.
a new rule I didn't know. We all learn something just about every meeting. Thank you, Sherry. All right, so we'll move on to item 3, future agenda items. For those out there in the cyberspace again, a reminder that this Saturday, October 20th, is Ojai Day. It's going to be a madhouse downtown. There'll be a mandala, I think, probably on the street at the corner of Ojai Avenue and Signal. There has been every year that I've been around for one of these. And lots of food and drink and people selling stuff and people talking about ecological stuff. And we invite everyone to come visit for probably, 9 to 5, something like that, I think is about the hours that Ojai Day is open. Yeah. And then our next meeting is November 7th, and it says solar guidelines. Now, tell us, Luke, what are we going to do? We covered this once before and sent something forward to City Council, I think with some, what do you think of this kind of questions? Are they sending it back for us to pick a solution and recommend a specific solution, or?
And that, I also think because it would modify an ordinance, so the
Yes.
planning commission has to weigh in first before the
Okay.
council can take action. I know the earlier meetings predate me. I believe this is relatively minor, code changes that are suggested. The planning commission has not seen that specific language. It would then go back to council afterwards.
Okay, so you're going to bring us a proposed text of an ordinance change?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Or a text amendment, I guess. Yeah,
Correct.
okay. And as I recall, it all had to do with how we measure what the solar blockage is, whether it's 30
Angle.
degrees off the top of a house or 58% of something or other.
Right.
Okay. Well, that should be fairly straightforward. And the ADU definitions to define legal, this was to say that legal means legal conforming as well as legal non-conforming?
I believe that is
That's-
it. It's a very dry subject matter, but yes, again, it is.
Boring
having-
but important.
And often comes up, yes. It's clarifying something that's not currently clarified.
Okay. My last question on this topic would be under items pending city council review of a planning commission recommendation. Says landscape standards, the city council requested additional information at the September 11th joint meeting. Do we have a summary of that someplace that we can at least include as a discussion item on November 7th? Or is this a public hearing where we need to go work text amendment, or what's the idea there?
I need to look in, since I was not at the joint meeting, with what it is. My understanding was that some of these things, staff was actually looking for more clarification from council as to what they wanted. And I believe that's
But
one of
once
them.
staff does something, then presumably the planning commission has to look at it
Yes.
again to recommend it to city council.
Correct. That's why it's on here, because it's not something that council would directly review.
Right, okay, do you have a concept at this point of when the landscape standards might come back to the commission? Is that something we can put on this little timeline here?
I would probably better answer that the next meeting, since it
Okay.
won't make the next meeting. That I don't want to commit and then find out it's
Sure.
more involved than I
Okay.
thought. But yeah, I would like to get some dates, since we're running out of the calendar year, and start filling those dates up. I do know hedges, fences, and walls is going to the city council this coming Tuesday, the 23rd, to kick that discussion off.
Oh, to kick off the discussion and request for a term sheet, probably with certain topics addressed.
That's what I would anticipate. It's
Okay.
kind of the
Because we haven't
global.
looked at it yet.
Right, and it will definitely be coming to you, I would assume, for at least one meeting, given that I know this has been an issue for some time, not only on the enforcement side, but also the standards side. So the staff report is pretty much looking at it flying at 30,000 feet and saying, okay, where do we want to go from here?
Here are some
So-
issues, what do you want us to do? Yeah,
Correct. I would anticipate several meetings on that.
okay. Yes, Chester?
I'd like to just move to cancel November 21st meeting, the day before Thanksgiving. Just get that off the books. Yeah, and not even have that there.
Probably a good idea. It's empty right now, and as the mayor says, without objection, so ordered. I see we also have Planning Commission code cleanup reviewed at the City Council October 9th. Did that generate a request for a term sheet, or, I'm trying to recall, there was some discussion of whether we hire a consultant to do proofreading, and then maybe the same consultant or a different consultant to deal with policy issues.
You know, that I have to check, because I think my view, a lot of that could be done by staff as well. And I know there have been some notations as what needs to get cleaned up. As long as it's a cleanup and not a wholesale rewrite, a lot of this, I think, could be done through staff.
Okay.
So I need to confirm, I wasn't on October 9th, I was not present. So I don't know if there was anything that specific about having a consultant take the lead on that. I don't believe so.
I don't think that any decision was made on that point. Okay, well, we'll talk about it some more on the 7th then. Anything else that it would be the pleasure of the commission to ask about on the upcoming meetings? All right, let's move to item 4, the liaison schedule. And Commissioner Nolan is not here, so we
She
can.
did go to that meeting. I was at
She-
the
yeah.
beginning of it, and that's the only part that I know about. But I didn't stay for the whole thing.
Right, we'll change that, Sherry, to have Commissioner Nolan report back on the 7th then. And Commissioner Corbin, the Building Appeals Board meeting of the 10th?
And I wasn't there.
Okay. And Commissioner Lottis, did you attend the MAC meeting 2 days ago?
I did. I actually went to I thought for sure I knew where Oakview Community Center was located, and I went to the Oakview Library.
That's the other
Community center
common
was
meeting
nowhere to
place
be
in
found. I
Oakview, yes.
finally did found my way over to the community center, so I won't forget that the next time. The one item on the agenda was a CUP, conditional use permit modification for the Thatcher School that involves really just changes to existing buildings, modifications, some demo, and some additions. Interestingly, they talked about setting up a historic district in the center of the campus that involves 63 buildings are within the district, and 42 buildings are considered contributing buildings. And the historic period that this district is based on is 1889 to 1951. And in exchange for getting approval from the county for building the new dining room, this was basically a requirement to set up a historic district. And I guess at first it was
There are some
something they
historic
needed to
buildings
think
there,
about.
yeah.
Very historic. And, but at the meeting, the people from Thatcher talked about how they really have come to embrace the whole concept. And so they're quite enthusiastic about it. So there's some changes to buildings within that historic district, but of course, all in accordance with the historic standards. And they've made the state approval. They're now in process at the federal level to actually be placed on the National Historic Register.
Okay.
So very cool. They're building a new multi-use building to replace the existing humanities building.
That's
They're
why
building,
the CUP, because it's a new building?
yeah, there's a whole range of changes, two new faculty residences, 17 rainwater capture tanks, one of which is like 100,000 gallons. I mean, I hope I have that right. That's to be planned for irrigation. But they also have a rainwater capture tank that's out by the stable so all the horses can get washed down. So, and they did get state grant funding for this, the rainwater capture tanks.
All predicated on there actually being some rain.
Yes, yes.
Is that rainwater from the roofs of the buildings there?
You know, I don't know that
I
detail.
hope they're not pulling it out of Thatcher Creek is the thing.
I don't,
Yeah,
good
I'm just
question,
curious.
but I don't know. There's some new tennis courts going in with no court lighting. And there are 26 protected trees, one of which is to be removed. So the mitigated negative declaration is on file on the county website, although I tried to find the information, it was impossible. So I did make a comment to that effect to the county staff who were there, that really the county should be doing a better job of identifying project numbers and then making it clear where this information is located on their website. And did I have anything else? Oh, there were numerous residents from the East End who came, and they were quite concerned about they love having Thatcher School out there. They're fine with making changes and so forth, and there's no increase in students or faculty as a part of this effort. But they were concerned about the construction-related traffic that starts at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, involves lots of, oh, are you?
So, this is so common, so, wah, wah, yeah,
Well,
that's our complaint.
they've got
I mean, I
narrow-
might as well wear a shirt that says, sorry, you know, sorry for the noise and sorry for the,
Well, they're feeling like their neighborhood is really impacted, and I think it's the
no,
amount of time.
it always is, and I wouldn't
It's
want it
been
in my
year after
neighborhood. I
year.
tell my clients that if I was doing this in my neighborhood on my projects, I'd hate it, you
Yeah.
know, so it's, no one likes.
I've been
who-
around to
who likes-
apologize to all my neighbors because of our remodel work.
They
Exactly.
basically have the one road up there, McNell, they're using that
Yep.
from 150 back and forth. Pretty heavy-duty construction trucks in some cases, going probably too fast, having a hard time stopping at the stop sign, swinging wide into
Yeah.
the walking
Hating to
path
stop
where
at the
people
stop
are-
sign. signs
Did they
on those
recommend
steep
putting
hills,
some
yeah.
signs up?
So.
That's what we've done in many of our projects. We'll put up some signs specifically for the construction traffic.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Uh,
there's ways to handle that.
Yeah.
So what the MAC ended up, they will be recommending that the sheriff post someone out there near the stop sign and, at least for a while. So, but the other complaint that was voiced was, I guess there's a pending, I don't know if it's actually been submitted to the county, application for expansion on the part of the Krishnamurti Foundation out there. And
Also on
so, on McNell, so they're just, their heads are starting to whirl a little bit in terms of, oh my gosh, another substantial construction-related impacts, and how many years is that going on? So that may be something, I mean, that's a project maybe the city can track when that's happening and follow it, because it potentially even affects the roads
These
into
people are
the
coming
city.
from Ventura or Oxnard, they're gonna be going right through the middle of town, so.
Well, it affects the roads into the city, and I don't know what what kinds of requirements there are to go back and improve the road if you damage it or it drops sand all over it or things like that. I don't know.
I just had a quick question on the CEQA document. Do you know, is the public review period going
It's
right
over.
now? It's
Yeah,
over,
yeah.
okay.
It actually confused me because I was looking and I saw an MND with the date of 2017 on it. But that was for I think that was in relation to the actual dining hall, the new dining hall, but since, I'm not sure. They didn't have to do they considered they didn't have to do a supplement. Whatever they're doing now is wrapped into that document. Oh, and I have one announcement. So also at the meeting, the Ojai librarian, and I'm going to screw up his name probably, Ron Solorzano, said that on October 27th at the Ventura County Museum, William Finnegan, who is the author of a prize-winning book, I even brought it, wait a minute.
They have 6 copies of that in the library right now.
Barbarian Days: A Surfing Life by William Finnegan. William Finnegan will be speaking October 22nd, 3 p.m., Ventura County Museum. And this was the most fun book I've read in the last year. So tickets are available at any of the libraries. There may be a waiting list at this point, but if you call around, maybe you can find tickets. So whoever's watching.
Thank you. Our city council liaison member is not here tonight, and so if there is no other business before the commission, we are adjourned at 7:28. Thank you very much.